report includes sensitive information which isn't in the public domain. So when we get to this stage of the agenda, I shall be seeking approval of the committee to exclude press and public from the meeting and pause the webcast. It's because we're discussing a matter that involves the likely disclosure of exempt information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the local authority holding that information. So that's just explaining things for people in the room and anybody at home who might wonder what's going on when we pause the meeting. I would like us to conduct the meeting with the same level of respect that we would if the entire meeting was being broadcast live, leaving party politics at the door. I hope that this approach works for you all, and so we're going to move on to the agenda and get cracking straight away. Okay. So apologies and name substitutes, please, Sam.
Thank you. We've got apologies from Councillor Seb James. We've got substitute Councillor Dan Birch. Apologies from Councillor Richard Tudge, and apologies from the Church Rep Tim Reid. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, does anyone have any declarations of interest or matters to raise in relation to the party whip? I see no hands, okay. Public participation, we have none today. So moving straight on to the main body of the report. During this item, we'll be receiving an update on recommendations in relation to school organisation and education sufficiency, which will be considered at Cabinet later this week on the 5th of February. And just to explain and reiterate that part of this agenda item is exempt from public broadcast in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972. At this point in the meeting, I shall be seeking the approval of the committee to move into private session. So in essence, we'll be dealing with agenda item 4 in two parts. Firstly, the public session, then the private session, before returning to the public session to enable me to close the meeting. Hope that's straightforward. So I hope that sets out a clear process for the meeting, particularly for anybody watching online. Okay, brilliant. So in attendance for this item, we have Councillor Stephen Foster. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Adam Johnston, Director of Children's Services. Sarah Wilkins, Assistant Director of Education, Early Years, Inclusion and Education Place Planning. Doesn't get any shorter, Sarah, every time I say it. Rachel Kiernan, Group Manager of Education Admissions, Sufficiency and Place Planning. And Penny Unwin, Head of Corporate Landlord Services. So a couple of new faces to us as a committee, but welcome to you all. And for clarification, we're being asked to consider and comment on the recommendations in the report to be considered at Cabinet on the 5th of February, to provide comments to the Cabinet member with responsibility for education and special education needs and or disabilities, to be considered at Cabinet at its meeting on the 5th of February, and determine whether any further information or scrutiny in relation to the topic is required. So what I'm going to do is to ask Sarah Wilkins to present the highlights, challenges and plans in the report. It's a big report. Thank you very much for such detailed information. Before moving on to Councillor Foster for his perspective, and then on to the panel for questions in this section only. Okay, so please remember that. Okay, so Sarah, if it's okay, we'll move over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting us to this scrutiny panel this afternoon. I will do just a brief overview because I'm sure that the panel has prepared questions for the report this afternoon. So, panel will be aware that this is an annual report that contains quite extensive set of appendices. Those appendices are intended for strategic planning, the oversight of our duties, and indeed our schools at multi-academy trust and school organisation level. Specific schools use the appendices for school place planning, as do we. There are 12 recommendations in the report, but to note that of those 12, it's actually 3 that are decision-based. The rest are about alerting to particular information, as you say, highlights and progress of work. For context, again, really important that we acknowledge that the process for education place planning is an ongoing process, and there are many aspects of place planning and provision development that have been in train for several years because we have to forecast into the future and review and adapt every year. So there's three main aspects of the report. The first aspect is around how the council is meeting the early years and childcare sufficiency duties, and I would say acknowledging this year the note again to panel that the availability and scope of childcare for the local authority continues to grow as the central government policy and provision for childcare has grown, therefore the duty grows into the local authority. And in terms of our childcare sufficiency duty, that does relate broadly to up to 30 hours a week for children aged 9 months to 4 years for 38 weeks a year, and there is a universal entitlement for some aspects of that, and then a specific focus on working parents, which does have an income cap on it, but the details of that are in the report. Overall, our take-up of entitlement is positive, and the availability of childcare provision in Worcestershire is sufficient. The capital panel will note the capital available for that coming in from central government is minimal. Another aspect of change that has been developing over the last couple of years is the encouragement and opportunity for schools to develop school-based nurseries. And we've seen a positive uptake by schools, maintained schools and local academy trusts interested in doing that, making applications to do that, and that capital is funded through the Department for Education. That is a Department for Education funded programme, very much involves the DFE. In future, the expectation is that gets delegated down to local authority level. But we are involved because we are expected to evaluate every proposal that comes through. In early years and childcare as well, we continue to understand the experiences of our youngest children with the most significant needs, and panel will read that we've continued to develop that childcare provision to meet those needs. Second, and a very significant part of our education duty is around mainstream provision. So that's the provision across our school community and that school age of children. And panel will read about how Worcestershire is starting now to see that impact of falling birth rates, but at the same time, with Worcestershire's high level of housing developments over a large area, that in places that is balancing itself out. In other local authority areas, the impact of falling birth rates has been more significant. Panel will notice that the Pershore review that has been covered in previous years has now been implemented and the changes to those schools has occurred. You will also note paragraph and a challenge for Worcestershire and other county authorities is the number of small schools we have and therefore small numbers of children in schools. You will notice as well in the report in mainstream our sufficiency challenge for high school places, secondary school places in Worcester City and Bromsgrove, and specific focus on those and in the recommendations. Those areas both being impacted in secondary school provision. We often have local members asking us about the impact of the changes in policy to independent schools. We've had those questions over a couple of years now from local elected members and occasionally from our MPs as well. So we include every year a paragraph on that and any changes that we are seeing. That market continues to change, but nothing significant for Worcestershire. Not that we often talk about it, but important for Worcestershire to note the impact of the central government's school rebuilding programme and the impact that has for schools to be rebuilt either in their entirety or partially in Worcestershire, and the detail on the new build school, first school in Redditch, Fox Lydiate, along with that view into the longer term, what we call pipeline schools. So our understanding of housing development, the impact of that, how that will flow through in terms of the need for further education places and what that may look like in terms of the need for new schools. At this point, the Cabinet and Council have only understood that and needed to agree that in terms of recommendations around Fox Lydiate first school. The others we don't bring forward until we're absolutely certain that new schools are required. And in there we've also included a paragraph to keep Cabinet and Council and public aware of the education impact on the new settlement named Whichover Newtown. So the final section of the report relates to our sufficiency for children with special educational needs and disabilities. As with every local authority, we remain pressured in that way, but also changing our system in that way. We await the white paper from government on the SEND reforms, seeing a further slight delay for that. So I think that may be coming just after half term now. The overview, the paper includes the overview for Worcestershire, so the acknowledgement that we have a higher than average number of children with education, health and care plans. We've seen, and panel members who have been alongside these sufficiency reports for a number of years will note that our proportions of children accessing mainstream education with that higher level of need is increased, which is a positive thing. Worcestershire was historically quite low on that. We still have a higher number attending special schools than average, but that has reduced slightly. The paper also relates to refers to the capital programme and Cabinet's commitment to investment in special provision, and also provides detail around the ongoing expansion of our existing special schools, including Regency High School, which relates then to the exempt paper that is part of one of those recommendations. And then finally, in terms of new provision and specific new school provision, you will see an update and the recommendation and decision making around our decisions and proposals back to the Department for Education for the new Malvern special free school proposed by the DFE, and the questions that we've been asked to, or questions that Cabinet have to respond to in relation to the continuation of that or alternative. So that really is the contents of the report, and I will hand back to you, Chair. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. And thank you for making reference to the white paper that we're still all waiting for. I think it reminds me of one of those trains where you're at the station and it says, this train is running 5 minutes late, it's half an hour late, it's 2 hours late, it's not coming at all. But it will come. We just need to be a bit more patient. But yeah, we're looking forward to that. Adam, you want to come in?
Just really quickly, in terms of the metaphoric trains. So I was at an event last Thursday, Friday with regional DCSs. I think hold on to it will come, and it will come imminently. Don't please anyone get wrapped in terms of specific timescales, because by the end of that event we'd had reliable information that it was going to be subsequently delayed a little further. I'm holding on to February. Suffice to say, whilst we don't know exactly what the white paper says, we do know that the white paper is going to majorly focus in terms of inclusion, unsurprisingly, as an agenda.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not 100% today. I should have mentioned that I was on a call with Georgia Gould, I think, one of the ministers last week, and had the opportunity to ask a question, which I wasn't expecting, so I had to drag something up and asked for a nugget of information that we would see in the SEND white paper, just to try and give us something. And she did mention about the investment into mainstream education, including capital funding, she had said, that would be coming. So there's a bit of a nugget direct from the minister's mouth, if you like. Okay, do any other officers want to come in before I bring in Councillor Foster for comment? Okay, Councillor Foster, is there anything you would like to say about this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I'd like to thank the officers, and in particular just Sarah Wilkins, for producing a very detailed annual educational sufficiency update. You can see the huge amount of detail in all the paragraph sections, some of which I'll refer to. While there continues to be challenges, most notably in Bromsgrove, where there are a high number of pupils living in the Bromsgrove town, and there is a risk that some high school students will need to be transferred to other schools for their year 9 to 11 education. That's including in September 2026 onwards. Elsewhere, the Worcester City secondary sufficiency provision has eased. Para 63 details the current forecast position. The September 29 peak demand forecast is revised down from 4 FE, that is 120 places, to now 3 FE, 90 places. As reported in October 25 Cabinet, Bishop Perrone C of E College have confirmed a permanent expansion for September 29 of 1 FE. This is £4.1 million capital investment. Since October's Cabinet, Tudor Grange Academy have in principle agreed to increase PAN by 15 places per year group. That's a half FE for circa £700,000 capital investment. So the main crux of that is when we had the October Cabinet and we had the Children's Panel, we were looking at a shortfall of to meet 4 FE 120 places, where we just had Bishop Perrone, and we were looking at the other schools, particularly looking at Pershaw High School, Dyson Perrins, and the Chase at Malvern. Now the revised forecast down, and that of course is it's not the fall in birth rates, which are well known pupil numbers. It's the pause in development. So there are a host of other schools, again as detailed, with places from 2029 able to meet, which is now only a 1.5 FE, that's 45 places forecast shortfall. That's in detail. That's detailed in para 78. And as a result of those numbers, Cabinet will authorise the withdrawal of the new secondary school proposal and remove the 33.6 million of borrowing required to build it. In other words, you wouldn't expect to spend millions of pounds to meet a 45 places shortfall in sufficiency. On SEND, we will be recommending to Cabinet on Thursday to reject the £5.7 million offered by the DFE. As you rightly point out, Madam Chairman, a lot of the emphasis from Georgia Gould on the sessions I listened to was an emphasis on expanding SEND provision in mainstream capacity. We've been doing that wherever possible. We've got £28 million investment over 3 years that's ongoing to do that. What we need is more SEND capacity to meet the growing need, and so we will be requesting to the DFE to continue to deliver the specialist free school in Malvern at the earliest opportunity. And surely we've got a fair chance of that, given that the government cancelled most of the free schools that the previous government had offered to build. So we're in a small number, luckily, but we do have an approved site and scheme and so on and so forth. So it's more than just luck. Beyond that, on SEND, we will expand our own capacity to meet demand for SEND in a central Worcestershire location, in a significant spend to save initiative. That's which is currently the commercially sensitive item covered by the exempt appendix. So you can ask me as many questions as you would like about that later. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. We will be going into private session to cover that exact thing. Thank you. Okay, so unless there are other comments from this side of the room, I think I'll open the floor to questions now. We've got two Dans, and so I'm going to have to be unusually formal here today and ask for Councillor Boatwright-Green, please, to kick things off for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Actually, that felt strange. I'm just trying to square a circle in my head here because I'm struggling to get to grips with the development side of this. The development plan for South Worcestershire, I'm expecting, will be adopted in the next couple of months. I'm kind of looking over towards my Wychavon colleagues, hoping they'll start nodding. We've had in this panel before that it usually takes about 4 years to build a school. We are expecting, according to the head of planning of Malvern Hills and Wychavon, that we will, at the 600 houses point, be looking to build a secondary school or an all-through school, because obviously we need to make sure we're meeting that need, and there's an expectation that developers will be contributing to that. And we're expecting 500 homes being built every year. And we're expecting that to really start in the next couple of years. So we're in 2026 at the moment, and by 2030, there is the anticipation that we'll be approaching that 600, if not kind of already over it. On top of that, I've done a quick back of a napkin calculation. We've got about 1,500 homes approved across the Pershore area, and I'm really talking about Pershore and the immediate villages, so Pinvin, Drakesport and places like that. I haven't gone much further than that. And at the moment we're saying 181 houses by 2027 and 9 extra primary school young people coming in. None of these numbers seem to meet what I would expect to happen with the sheer volume of houses here. And at the same time, we're saying it takes 4 years to build a school. And there's an expectation that there's going to be an all-through school or a secondary school being built in this new centre. Is that feasible, bearing in mind we're currently sitting here in 2026, and by 2030, 2031, we're expecting that there's going to be those houses? Because at the moment, I can't see how this all fits in.
Okay, so a question there around sort of timings and new housing and places becoming available. Rachel?
Thank you. Thanks, Dan, for your question. In short, yes, it is what we are planning for. So you'll know that we work very closely with our head of planning and all of the district councils to review the housing that's coming forward. And as that changes, we adapt our forecasts, as you've seen for Worcester City Secondary. We are working really closely on Wychavon Town in terms of the development and the need for additional and new school provision, including, as you say, potentially an all-through school in that first development phase. In terms of timescales, yes. So we're currently building out Fox Lydiate at the moment, and the designs and everything for that school are being developed, and that is planned for 2028. So we do have sufficient time to be able to deliver new provision for Wychavon Town by 2029, 2030, as and when that new education provision will be required.
Thank you, Rachel. Did you want to come back, Councillor Boatwright-Green?
So a slightly more problematic hypothetical is obviously we could be building out faster because of the government's targets. So it could be, at the moment we're calculating 500, but people are kind of talking potentially about 800. to what extent can we really be prepared for this one? Or is it a case of we may find that we end up having to bridge the gap as best we can, knowing that at the moment these numbers are quite fluid? Because I've got to be honest, if someone said to me we're planning on building 500 a year, that would have sounded quite extreme. I'm very aware now that obviously that's something that they're now saying could actually be the lower number. To what extent can you really prepare for that one, or is it very much back to my napkin where we're trying to calculate this?
I can see you poised, Rachel. Off you go.
I can assure you we don't do anything on the back of a napkin, but we can only be prepared as we know the information comes through. Obviously, if housing does speed up, that creates more of a challenge in terms of delivery. But we also know that there is some capacity already in Wychhaven as a whole, but Pershore specifically, to be able to support us through those first few years. It's not ideal. We want to avoid transporting children from Wychhaven town to outside of the new town. However, we probably will need to do that in the first few years. So it does create a challenge. Where I would say we're in a much better position now is that we have a design of baseline schools that we've been working on for the last 3 years in preparation for Fox Lydiate. So in effect, we have a design that you could roll out quite quickly. The challenges will be, where does that initial finance come from, that capital, to deliver?
Thank you, that's great. Okay, brilliant. We might come back to the kind of the house building explosion and the sufficiency, because I think several councillors have raised that. But Mel, I think you've got, sorry, Councillor Fordington, you have something slightly different to focus on.
I don't mind being called Mel, not at all. It's really regarding the schools which you've actually got this current moment, the secondary schools. I'm just looking at the classroom management within itself as well. Obviously, it's going to put an immense amount of pressure on the teaching sort of staffing. And also, are you going to be training and delivering some kind of additional sources when it comes to SEND children, which are coming into the mainstream schools? And of course, the classroom will be increased in numbers and sizes as well. Are you going to be catering for that, as in resourcing the educational sort of side for the teachers and staff, really? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sarah, are you wanting to answer that, or yeah? Thanks.
I
think is your question, Councillor Fordington, specifically in relation to special educational needs and disabilities?
Yes, it is.
And
also, I would like to sort of get us to understand how would this actually meet every child in the classroom, because we will have different abilities, won't we?
So I'll try to keep the response specific to also thinking about provision planning, because that is what this paper is about, understanding where children are and how we meet their educational needs through a place. So the SEND white paper reforms are really important to the specific guidance that we're expecting from the Department for Education. We understand the principles around that already, because those have been shared quite widely, which relate to early identification, early support, the importance of children attending their provision in their home community, and the skills, capability and capacity of our schools to do that. All of that responsibility and that progress does not fall specifically to the local authority to make happen. Our schools are a range of organisations, you'll know. We have LA Maintained Schools and we have Academy Schools. And we have schools at different stages of their capability, capacity and skill level to meet those inclusion needs now and into the future. What's an opportunity, and Worcestershire as a local area partnership has taken advantage of, is the change programme for the DFE funded change programme for SEND, and which has allowed us to test different ways of working with schools in order to increase their skill, knowledge, capability to be inclusive. And a really good example of that is partnership in neuroinclusion in schools programme that we're part of. So there are a number of programmes out there already that support inclusion in schools. Remember that schools under their operating requirements and are judged by Ofsted are compelled to work in that way as well, albeit schools will be at different stages. Local academy trusts will also and are involved locally and nationally in improvements to inclusion. We have our own local area inclusion support offer. We provide training to schools, and like I say, we've been really fortunate to be, and our schools would agree, be included in that change programme, which also includes the Parent Carer Forum as a partner. So my final response, I think, was you were asking about numbers in classrooms. So perhaps you refer to, particularly at secondary school, some secondaries who will cap particular class numbers, and that may be just on operating in the building that they're operating in. We'll see lots of different designs of schools, some older, some newer, where classroom sizes are different, where they may organise their children differently. That is down to the school to do that, and then they liaise with us, on how they're doing it. In primary, in particular at the lower key stages, there are set limits on the number of children you can have in a classroom. So I don't know that I have a specific answer about what are we doing about different class sizes, because I think it's a perennial issue that we continue to deal with. We manage it in relation to place planning, but we also manage it in terms of an inclusion approach.
Thanks, Sarah. I think, Adam, you have your finger poised on the button
Just really
as well.
quickly.
Except you haven't turned your mic on.
Can you all hear me? Yes. Just really quick, I think just to add to what Sarah said, I think the best way of looking at this, because the change programme has been really successful, and in previous overview and scrutiny panels where we've had a specific focus on SEND, and there will be members today who will have heard these discussions. Fantastic outcomes and fantastic progress. Well, we've learnt a few things from that. Each school has very individual criteria, so you can't just lift and shift the approach. So the level of experience, the level of understanding, the associated resource that's needed, training, etc., etc., etc. The other element, not to be sceptical, just to be really, really upfront with people, is that the amount of schools currently engaged in terms of the change programme, in many respects, I'd almost view it as a bit of a pilot approach that's gone well. We want to expand that to all schools. That goes back to what Sarah was saying earlier on around the importance of reform and the associated white paper, which compels schools to meaningfully engage in terms of inclusion. But the other entity to this, which is all important, is the associated resourcing that goes with that to enable them to do so, and to do so at pace, and to do so meaningfully. So I guess when you hear about the intimated frustrations, which I think we probably all share around the delay of that white paper and the detail and the associated resource that goes with that, that's what it's about.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adam. I don't think your mic is working. I don't know why, but hopefully everybody picks that up about the opportunity for the change programme has been a really successful pilot for us, and that one we're hoping to roll out to other schools. Yeah. Another little thing I picked up was around early years education and the government's intention to train a lot more early years teachers and classroom assistants in SEND. So hopefully that will help in terms of early identification and early intervention, which we know is a really successful way of working. Is that okay, Mel? Okay, Sam, is it on this point or something different?
No, on the general schooling.
Okay.
Schooling, Councillor Foster's.
I'll let you come in if others in the panel don't mind. Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just to touch on Councillor Foster's presentation and what he said about Bromsgrove, I believe Bromsgrove's already past the breaking point. Indeed, a councillor in the district had to send her child somewhere else for education. I know that the Councillor Foster touched on the fact that in September 2026, there'll be children shipped out of the centre of Bromsgrove elsewhere to attend schooling, but that's already happening. So we really absolutely must come to a solution for Bromsgrove. Teenagers need to go to school, and we are struggling. So I'm wondering if the administration is looking very seriously at either an extension or what are we putting forward for the children in Bromsgrove, please?
Yeah, thanks for your perspective, Sam. I think Councillor Foster did highlight that there was a particular need in Bromsgrove, so it's good to hear it from your side too. Rachel, who wanted to come in? Sarah? I was being told Rachel, but it doesn't matter.
I'll come in to start, and then I will hand to Rachel around the detail. When you read the report in full, you will see that North Bromsgrove High School and South Bromsgrove High School are not the only secondary schools in Worcestershire that are oversubscribed. They are popular schools. That's important to note, and it's important to note as well in one of our towns that we have two good secondary schools, and it's an asset for Bromsgrove. Absolutely, it's an asset for Bromsgrove, but it brings the challenge of making it popular. That's really important to understand the context of parental preference and choice, so the number of people that are choosing a school who may not be in the catchment, and how that impacts on what we sense is a worry about children in Bromsgrove needing to go to other areas. Yes, we do have that specific issue for Bromsgrove, and Rachel can provide some more detail now, particularly including what happened last year, which will probably be helpful for the panel. But I thought it's really important to start with, we do need to recognise that actually is a feature for other schools, not just in Worcestershire, it's across the whole country, because the whole national landscape of parents being able to choose where their children go to school has been something that has grown in terms of the legislation over 20 or more years.
Yeah, thank you. It's important for us to understand that, isn't it? And Rachel, you're going to add some context for us, I think.
Thank you, yes. As Sarah said, both schools are oversubscribed and continue to be oversubscribed. And several families are choosing to apply for either North Bromsgrove or South Bromsgrove from out of area. So that does increase the challenge in terms of sufficiency of provision. An update from last year, so in terms of September 2025, as at September 2025, there were 25 young people who had stated a preference for one of the Bromsgrove high schools who were not able to be offered a place at one of the two Bromsgrove high schools. Where we find ourselves today with those 25 young people, 11 of them have now been offered either North or South Bromsgrove High School as a place, because there's been movement within young people attending those schools. 4 of them chose to go to an independent setting. 2 of them have elected to be home educated. 5 of them are still attending Waisley High School in Rubery that was offered as the alternative. 1 is attending Droitwich High School that was offered as an alternative. And 2 have chosen other schools themselves that we did not offer as an alternative. So the point there is that over time things do change, and within the academic year so far, those 25 young people in the main are finding themselves in different places. When we look forward to September 26, yes, there is still a challenge, and there continues to be a challenge, and that is about, again, families choosing one of those 2 high schools from out of area. We're continuing to work with both schools, and on the 11th of February this month, we have meetings with both schools for them to consider whether they would be able to offer places over their published admission number. And we've been doing that for the last 3 years. Alongside that, we're also continuing to investigate the potential expansion of North Bromsgrove High School. the challenge with that is that both schools are private, voluntary, privately funded initiative schools, or PVI schools, and therefore the challenges to expand the schools come at a higher cost in terms of capital and revenue. But we are continuing to look at options to expand North Bromsgrove High School outside of the PFI contract, and that involves working with Bromsgrove District Council. We're also working with Howe College, and we are looking at Worcestershire County Council owned property within the vicinity of the school.
Thank you. It's really helpful to have that level of detail, which I didn't know. Sam, you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you very much. I have two questions. The first question, when we say out of area, how far is the radius when you consider out of area? The other question is, there are talks about the expansion of North Bromsgrove. When will those talks actually conclude? Thank you.
Rachel?
When I refer to out of area, there are families choosing North Bromsgrove or South Bromsgrove High School from areas such as Waisley Hills, Redditch, Droitwich. That's the sort of breadth of children wanting to come to either North or South Bromsgrove High School. In terms of concluding the options for looking at expansion, at the moment we're doing feasibility studies on a couple of options. It depends how long those feasibility studies take, but we were hoping in the next few months to be able to know whether there is an option to expand North Bromsgrove High School.
Thanks, Rachel. Let's just draw a line into Bromsgrove for now. Maybe you could continue the conversation offline if that's okay. I do want to try and get a good sort of range of questions from people if that's possible. And I know, Matt, you wanted to come in probably around Worcester capacity, but maybe something else. But
well, I'll start with general. Thank you, Chair. I'll start with general, kind of following on maybe from Councillor Boatwright-Green's point about sufficiency. Because only a few months ago we were saying we needed 4 form-entry, and now it says 3. I mean, obviously within, I think it's paragraph 62, 63, kind of paragraph 62 gives a few reasons for that, but obviously I'd like to have a bit more of an idea exactly what has changed, because it's been 4, then suddenly it's 3, so kind of it references a few things about numbers changing slightly. So maybe firstly just a better understanding of why it has gone from 4 to 3. Thank you.
okay, thanks. Who wants to take that one? Rachel?
Thank you. So we update our forecasts annually, and that includes updating housing trajectories. So we've updated since October, since we last came to Cabinet. We've used the October school census, and we've updated the housing trajectories that we received from District Council. And in particular relevance to Worcester City is obviously the South Worcester Development Plan updates. Based on that, so based on slight reductions in children on roll at Worcester City primary schools, which could be because of parental preference, choosing other schools, and some housing actually not being delivered on the timescales that they were originally proposed. That has resulted in a reduction by 1 form of entry, so 30 children over for 2029.
Okay, so it's more of a delay in terms of house building. So we will need that capacity, but not in the upcoming. Okay, I mean, I'm sure others might want to follow that up more. I mean, I have got some specific questions, 1 or 2 questions, just around, because obviously the 2 schools that mentioned in Worcester both happen to be in my division. I'm just lucky to have lots of schools where I am. So in terms of, just 1 question about, so Bishop Perrone, I'm actually meeting the head, I think tomorrow or the day after, to discuss issues in the area about, congestion and all the issues that we have at schools, how that will impact. Just interested, the cost to build is only 4.1 million. That seems not a lot from my perspective. So just firstly, understanding what quality of building will get built for that amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel?
Thank you. 4.1 million is actually over and above what the Department for Education provide to a local authority per place. So we would expect to meet DfE requirements in terms of guidelines of delivery with 4.1 million for a 1FE expansion at a secondary school.
Does that help, Matt?
Yeah, I suppose it's probably, I imagine DfE aren't providing enough money to build a decent class. I think probably their standards are probably too low in my opinion, but that's what I've heard from other people more on the architectural side of things, but maybe that's one way of DfE saving money, but that's not much we can do about that. Quick other question around, of the expansion of a school like Bishop Frome is, obviously I said, congestion and problems like that. So is there part of the whole planning process that to ensure that the school, and I will be kind of pushing the head when I meet them about having a proper, school travel plan, that kind of thing, because obviously, I'm sure this is true about every, councillor has schools in their patch which have got problems. Obviously, Bishop Frome's got a primary school next door as well, so you've got 2 schools in the vicinity and another primary school just down the road. So parking an issue. So how much pressure can we put on schools to make sure that they do have a proper, decent travel plan? Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure that that's something that could be exacerbated as well, but if we're moving more children and young people around, for example. So yeah, what have you got to say about that, Rachel?
Thank you. Yeah, it is an expectation that the school, with their property agent, produces an active travel plan, understands the impact of additional children and parent carers, and works within the community to develop and secure that provision. We absolutely would support that and do support that, and it is an expectation that they deliver that as part of any increase in provision.
That's great, thank you. I'm sure lots of us are listening to that and we'll be having similar conversations with our schools. Matt, can I move on? Is that okay? Anthony, would you like to come in now? Quite by accident, you've got quite a good geographical spread of councillors actually on this committee. So I think we'll probably, Anthony's a Wyre Forest councillor, so we may be looking to the Wyre Forest area.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, that's correct. Kidderminster schools have surplus places across the board, I believe, quite a lot of them. And this was actually predicted back in, I think it was back in 1998, 1999, when we had the LEA review into the Wyre Forest, and they did say that numbers would dwindle, so they got it right. At the moment, we're obviously looking at the development of Lee Castle Village, and there is apparently a school on the cards, which I believe is for 420 primary school and preschool children, 5 to 11. I've read somewhere it's predicted to be completed in 2028, although it does say here the indicative date required is 2031, so I'm not too sure where we stand with that. But it does state, and this is page 689 of the report, that the contributions are generally insufficient to meet the full cost of creating this additional provision, and there are 4 schools listed on that. So the first question is, council capital to deliver these new schools is required. How much is that going to be? And secondly, if the school is not complete or even started, I'm not too sure on the state of it, where are these children being taught at the moment, and where will they be taught over the next few years? Because obviously the schools that have surplus places are lacking in finances. So really at the moment we're just sort of moving things around. I mean, can we be sure that we're going to get this right in the next 4 or 5 years, and we're not going to sort of just end up with schools with even more surplus places if we don't keep our eye on the ball?
Okay, so a different problem to some of us that are oversubscribed with a bit of a spare capacity in Wyre Forest.
Thank you. So yes, you're absolutely right. There are schools within the Wyre Forest area that have surplus places, particularly at primary age range. And yes, we've been working with many of those schools to either reduce their published admission number so they can manage and manage their staffing, etc. And they can also manage their accommodation. In some instances, we've actually been working with them to create alternative provision, so that can include early years provision within some of that surplus capacity, or provision to support children with special educational needs or disabilities. So we've opened, one recent example is that we are opening a primary SEN unit at St John's Primary School to utilise some of that surplus capacity. In terms of forecasting demand alongside the major housing in Wyre Forest, We keep an active eye on the forecasts related to the new housing, so how Lee Castle is, the number of children Lee Castle is currently yielding, and that helps us then forecast for when would we need a new school on Lee Castle. We are minded to continue to support existing schools by filling those schools up first. Obviously, that's determined by parental preference, before we deliver any new school provision. So our aim is to not deliver new school provision whilst we have significant surplus capacity at other local schools. Children are being transported currently from Lee Castle because there are no safe walking routes to local primary schools, but there are several primary schools that children are attending from Lee Castle. As I say, we update our forecasts, like I was talking about earlier, in terms of the housing trajectory and the numbers of pupils already on roll at existing schools to then be able to forecast when we would need to deliver a new school by. I think you asked a question about the capital. So there is a challenge in terms of the capital, in terms of what we receive from education planning obligations, does not always cover the full cost of delivering new schools. And that can be that the number of dwellings are not sufficient to equate to a proportional contribution that covers the cost of the new school. It can also be because of the timescales of the agreement of Section 106 when it was signed versus when the new school is to be delivered and the inflationary costs. It can also be because we need to actually subsidise some of that with grant funding as well as Section 106 contributions. So every single new school or proposal of a new school is slightly different. So I can always provide you details around Lee Castle and the contributions that we're expecting versus the cost of delivering the new school, but I don't have that with me this moment.
Thanks. Is it okay to provide you with
that
that
would be good,
outside the meeting, Anthony? Yeah. Is it okay for Rachel to provide you with those numbers outside of the meeting?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you. A lot of detail coming forward there, Rachel. Thank you very much. And Sarah, you want to add?
Just to add one extra thing to Rachel's detailed description. Panel will be reminded as well that the Section 106 obligations policy was updated this year. So that's a process actually that was agreed under the previous administration that needed to be done. That's in that we need to review and increase the expectation of housing developers in terms of financial contributions, and our current council with member responsibility approved that change of policy, and it was implemented last autumn.
Great, thank you. Okay. Oh yes, of course.
Just going back to the children being moved around from Lee Castle to surrounding schools. What particular schools are they being sent to? Is it French, St John's, St Catherine's? Are those the main schools?
The two that spring to mind are Cookley and St Mary's, but I can get a list for you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. For those of you that don't know, Lee Castle's kind of on the outside edge of Kidderminster as you're heading out to the more rural areas, so certainly Cookley is, a good school, I believe. Councillor Dan Birch, do you have something you want to ask?
Thank you, Chairman. My question was possibly slightly more generic. It's around when we talk about sufficiency. Now, I know from the cases with schools within my ward that what they've been able to do is essentially repurpose classrooms and other learning spaces which we use. So, for example, repurposing a library back into a classroom and other sort of spaces like that. They had a hub that the students could go to, which was once again repurposed into a classroom. So when it comes to statistically, they've got the capacity there. But what that's meant in order to get that capacity is they've had to repurpose those spaces which provide a better learning experience for those students. So when it comes to producing these reports, is there any consideration given to the fact of whether these schools have those additional facilities, like the hubs, like the libraries, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, actually. Yeah, Rachel.
Thank you. So we refer schools and we use ourselves DfE space standard guidelines, which is guidelines, it's not statutory, but we expect when we are doing a review of accommodation of any school, whether it's a LA maintained school or an academy school, that those space standards are referred to. What we can't avoid is that schools make their own decisions on how to utilise that space and whether they want to have a library or not, because they might have close links to the community library. But wherever we are assessing the capacity of a school, we refer to the DfE guidelines. So they are the BB 103 and BB 104 guidelines. And there is an expectation that all schools have learning resource provision, for example, which includes a library.
Thank you. I know that's important, especially since Schools Library Service, stopped operating some years ago now, but it's good to know that that is in mind when making these decisions. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. And so for context, Councillor Birch, I think it would be important for us to express to panel that we don't force schools to make unnecessary changes. We'll have a discussion. Sometimes we find ourselves in a place where we might have to have quite a firm negotiation because the school is really, really spread out within the accommodation it has. And often they will sense their operating costs are quite high if they're operating in a space which is much, much greater than the number of children they have. But I think really important that we would say we don't go along and force schools to give up spaces that are important to their effective and quality running.
Great, thanks. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Councillor Birch. All right. Do we have any more questions? So Councillor Boatwright-Green, and I've noticed Councillor Robinson at the back, but I'll just check that we're done with the committee first, and then I'll come to you, okay?
It's a really nice, quick and easy, very simple question. So you mentioned the Fox Lydia School and that it can be used as a model, which is great because I love models. So the Cabinet approved in November 23 to move this forward. So we're in February now. So are we in a February 23 situation where we could see this kind of moving forward in November 26? Are we more in a February 22 situation where we'd be looking more at November 22? Or are we more kind of looking a little bit further down the line? Because obviously 500 houses keep plonking on every year. So what I'm trying to get an understanding of is where would we say we were in terms of that model going forward? Are we looking at kind of the potential to start moving this forward this year, next year, the following year? Whereabouts would we say we are on that kind of journey as a model?
Okay, is someone able to provide that level of detail?
I think I'll start by just clarifying the question, then probably hand to Rachel. I think, Councillor Boatwright, are you asking a question specific to Fox Lydia, or are you asking about the, for want of a better term, standard design that we've worked on for the delivery of primary schools and where that's got to?
So I asked before about kind of building out in Parkway, and I was told that Fox Lydia was a good model of how you've been doing things. And I'm really referring to the idea, it's probably going to be an all-through school, isn't it, in the Parkway situation. So when you're saying that you've got that as a model that you'll be able to kind of replicate because it's worked, and it's something that when you go to a new kind of areas, you'll be able to do that, I'm trying to get an understanding of where you would be in that timeline of then actually creating that new school. So I'm trying to understand, are you saying that this is something that we're still a few years down the line, so probably looking more towards the kind of November 28 kind of situation where we'd be bringing something to Cabinet, or are we actually looking that actually it'll be able to move quite quickly because obviously we are building out a new town quite quickly. We are going to see, if we're looking at November 28 as when we get something to Cabinet, which obviously be the unitary, we'd be building in September 2032 when 1,500 homes would already be there. So I'm trying to get an understanding of if you've got yourself a model where you say it's worked quite well, I'm trying to understand where we are on that potential timeline for when we're building that new school in that new town.
Does that help? So it's the current model used at Fox Lydia, how is that translating forward to the new town and where are we on that timescale? Yes? Okay, got it.
Okay. There is a difference between the timescales and the programme of delivery at Fox Lydia being one strategic site and the timescales and delivery of new education provision at a new town. And we are dependent on a lot many more different working relationships with Wychhaven, with all of the land developers, with government potentially considering Wychhaven Town to be brought forward early. I would say we are in a good position because we have the lessons learned and we have the programme delivery from Fox Lydia, but I would also say it's not a replication of, because Fox Lydia is one school in one vicinity, Wychhaven Town is a new town with many different education provisions. Would I say that we are prepared to move on Wychhaven Town? Then yes, because we already are. And we're already working with districts, land developers, etc., to understand the timeline that we need to deliver that education provision for Wychhaven Town.
Great. I think I got that. Is that okay, Councillor Boatwright Green? So slightly different model, slightly apples and pears situation, but what do you think?
I understand. It's one of those where, this is why as a scientist I never ever use a model because they're always wrong, but it's one of those where I'm trying to get an understanding of where we are in terms of this journey. I'm obviously not trying to get you to pin down, right, yes, it'll be open in September in 2029. That's not what I'm expecting. I think the problem is we've got concerns from residents, rightly so, that every time another 250 houses go in, they are seeing that we've got 5,000 homes on their doorstep, plus 1,500 homes have already been approved. And I think what I'm trying to get an understanding of is when I'm on the doorstep, I need to be able to say to people is, look, we're actually on this journey. We know that we're going to need to build it. What we're really anticipating is, by September kind of 2031 to 2033 is where we're going to start to get these things landing. And that's what I think is going to happen. But if we can't say to residents what we're really aiming for, even if it is a bit of a kind of, landing kind of area rather than a fixed date, I think it makes things a bit easier, because a lot of the answers I've got today, it's very much, we know what we're going to do and we know it's there, but obviously it's quite hard to kind of square the circle, as I started at the beginning. But it would be useful to be able to say, right, this is what we're moving forward with and this is how it's going. Because at the moment it does just feel way too empty, bearing in mind what we know is coming.
So I guess the question is there a way to continue that conversation so that Councillor Boatwright Green can keep his residents informed as to what the latest situation is, what the modelling applied might be, although you don't like models, Councillor Boatwright Green, but okay. So I think that might be helpful going forwards maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can share with you, based on housing trajectories that we know now, when we would be looking to create some new provision. Obviously, there is fluidity that's needed within that, as we've seen in Worcester City, etc., and we've just been talking about Bromsgrove. Housing delivery can change very quickly. But yes, based on what we know now, we could provide you with an indicative.
Helpful, thank you. I hope you agree. Yeah, great. Sarah, you want to come in?
Yeah, just finally on that. Obviously, I think the development of Wychhaven Newtown is going to be a significant topic for Worcestershire and for your residents. So it will be more broadly, I guess, than just education that you're being asked questions about. For some assurance, we meet on a monthly basis as a strategic steering group that looks at all major educational projects, including the term that we use, pipeline, what's coming through. Part of that oversight is constantly looking to understand at which point we bring forward for the Cabinet to make that decision to spend money on preparing for a new school, because you'll know preparing for a new school and building it all costs money. And as officers, that's, you will appreciate, is really, really important in terms of making sure that we're providing the Cabinet and Council with the right information and the right steer at the right time to deploy the right resources at the right time. So we do that on a monthly basis, and that in that pipeline review we'll say, right, at this point we think X quarter of X year that we may need to bring to Cabinet, that decision now to start to go out to consultation around a school. I think what we've heard today, and really importantly because of Witch Haven being a new settlement, that probably more there will be more information that will be shared more broadly in terms of the council anyway. But we will note that, and as we would do in terms of any papers that we're keeping local members up to date, particularly on what we know about schools. Yeah, it's a changing, it's a kind of changing landscape all the time.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm sure we'd all welcome that. You know, we want to get involved and to help our communities and our residents and future residents. So that sounds like a great opportunity. Do we have more questions from the committee before I invite our guest member, Councillor Robinson, to ask a question, which I'm sure he's got, unless he's just here to listen and enjoy the conversation. But do you have a question, Josh?
I do, and thank you, Chair, for indulging me. Here, just back to Bromsgrove, and I thank Rachel for her time the other day on going through this. Just three very quick questions to an officer and one to Councillor Foster, if possible. Yeah, just coming back on the bit off Councillor Amar has said, I think it was 25 children you said in September 2025. And then you were talking about, you know, how people come from Droitwich are applying, but is that just the standard process of people applying who are like foster children or are like kids who have got siblings at these schools? Because it was described as if it was coming from Droitwich, and that was made a real big problem for Bromsgrove. And then of those 25 children, how many were either in the catchment of North or in the catchment of South? And then the final one is on the fact that the capacity is just going to be completely overridden. It's a bit to officers and a bit to Councillor Foster, and I think Councillor Foster would agree to me that the high school provision in Bromsgrove is one of the biggest problems he will face. So could you try to explain what we are going to do, because the PFI contract is making this very, very, very difficult, or if next to it impossible. We need to be able to tell children in Bromsgrove, you know, that they'll be able to go to their local school if they want to. And at this rate, I don't believe I can tell my 3-year-old that she'll be able to go to the school I can probably see from my 2 minutes walk down the road.
Thank you. I don't know who wants to go first, Rachel or Councillor Foster. Rachel?
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Out of the 25 that were offered, I haven't got the specific details here today, but I can get them as to how many of them lived in North Bromsgrove catchment or South Bromsgrove catchment. In relation to that ongoing, we have done a huge amount of work, particularly this academic year, to try and encourage families to apply for their catchment schools as part of their preference. Obviously, it is parental preference where they choose to apply for, but encouraging families to name their catchment school as one of their preferences, they are more likely to be offered a school within their locality. Where they don't name one of their catchment schools, those are the families that are more likely to be have to be offered, where there is insufficiency of places, a school outside of their area. Sorry. I was just going to say, in providing the information around catchment areas and what have you, I will just need to be careful that there's no children that could be identified by the information that I provide. So I'll be able to anonymise those numbers for you.
So sorry. Obviously, people are allowed to breathe between sentences, and I jumped in there a little bit quickly, Rachel. Sorry about that. Is that okay, Josh, for that part? And then you had one about PFIs and that funding.
Yeah, just to clarify on that point, it's obviously in Bromsgrove, the catchment areas for some schools, not a high school potentially, but some of them are a bit funny where you can see the school and not be in its catchment. So it's the 25, because you might apply to go to South, but not live in their catchment, but live really close to it and never have put North down, and that's the problem why you go into Waisley's. But they should be able to go to the local school that they've got to. We should be able to have provision within Bromsgrove to do that, because it must be costing the council a fortune sending them to Waisley.
Anything to add, Rachel, on that?
Only that where you have very popular schools, which you do in Bromsgrove, the two high schools, they will attract families from out of area, as we discussed earlier, which then does create an additional challenge in terms of sufficiency. If we looked at the number of children living in Bromsgrove in both catchment areas, there would be a lot less demand than there is currently because of families choosing or wanting to choose to attend one of those schools from out of area. That doesn't take away that we are trying to find solutions to create more places in Bromsgrove to meet that, to try and meet some of that parental demand.
Thank you. Okay, Josh?
Yeah, it's just on the final point about obviously the problem now we've got PFI and it's basically to Councillor Foster is what is the actual plan that he wants to bring forward to ensure that children in Bromsgrove can go to their local high school.
Okay, so PFI, obviously we see issues outside education, in health and even in libraries and the Hive and things like that. But Councillor Foster, is there anything that you can respond to at the moment?
No, no, it's just a problem. We just need to continue to talk, Josh. Obviously, I agree with you that it's possibly the biggest challenge we face at the moment, especially for this year. Yeah, so I'm just in complete agreement with you.
Great. It's always nice to find consensus in the room. Sarah?
Thank you. Not that I would claim to be an expert on PFI at all. It's very complicated, but from a officer and corporate perspective, the council has commercial and commissioning oversight of the PFI and has strengthened that. And we've worked over the last 2 to 3 years, worked much more closely with the schools. Unfortunately, all of those schools that are PFI schools had become separate organisations, and that's part of the academisation process. But in terms of managing the PFI and holding the SPV, the service provider vehicle, those organisations that run that contract to accounts, we've been working quite closely with the schools to do that. And the PFI expires in 2038, and there is no change to that. I think the other thing for assurance is that the Department for Education also have a PFI department and specialists themselves. So where we find if we've got particular issues, we can refer to the Department for Education as well. But I think in terms of seeing those contracts through, we're in a fairly strong place with our current arrangements with both the schools and with the delivery vehicle for the PFI.
Great, thank you. I don't think anyone's an expert on PFI, to be honest with you. It's very complicated, isn't it? But Sam, I think you've got another question you wanted to ask.
Oh, thank you. No, I just come back to Josh's point about out-of-area children. Surely we should be working on improving the schools in their area so they don't come to Bromsgrove. Like use Bromsgrove as a benchmark of how to make all the schools better. So problem solved. So what's going on with that? Thank you.
I'm sure we'd all like to be able to wave a magic wand and have everywhere at an excellent standard. But Sarah, what's your view on that?
I was going to say I would agree with you, Chair. However, actually, I need to be careful there in that all of those schools in the area are all judged under the previous inspection framework as good by Ofsted. There are multiple factors in why parents prefer other schools. If I go back to when I started in this role as Assistant Director, North Bromsgrove was not a popular school at all, and it is something to be celebrated that Bromsgrove has really balanced, that provision of education, so that's a positive thing. Waisley Hills has undergone a significant improvement journey. It takes quite a long time for parents to change their preference, and I guess that also links to siblings, and if you're sending your child to one school, you'll want to send your child there as well. All of those schools, all of us secondary schools in Worcestershire, I know take school improvement very, very seriously. We are fortunate to have good quality education, and in terms of our local authority remit, we work absolutely appropriately with all of those schools in making those improvements. I'm afraid the scope to which, and I'm not criticising it, but we have to observe it, the scope to which parental preference in terms of where you can choose to ask for your child to attend school, and then the appeals process, which for an academy, they are their own admissions authority, so they run their own independent appeals. How that works will always impact on where children are able to go to school. But I think we have everything in place in terms of our network of support with schools and how we're working with them to improve. But the majority, vast majority of our secondary schools and high schools are all academy schools now.
Yeah, it's a good point, really well made. Okay, Sam. Right, do we have any more questions on this part of the agenda? Oh, Mel, sorry, I see you there.
That's fine. I just got one final question for you, for everyone here. Just the transportation costs, how much is it actually costing the whole transporting kids from A to B? How many more kids are actually into the whole sort of attachment area itself as going from one school to the other? I just want to know the number of the students which are actually going to and from schools. Thank you.
Is that something we have detail on today, Rachel? No? Okay, do you want to give a response for now?
Can I just clarify the question? Is it specifically in relation to Bromsgrove, or is it for all?
It's county. It's just general.
County-wide home to school transport?
Absolutely.
Adam?
Can I just clarify the question? Is my microphone working now? It is. Should I just be booming? Right, okay. So all home-to-school transport across the county, as opposed to home-to-school transport for children who can't attend the catchment?
That's right, yes, yeah. The ones which
cannot attend?
Yes.
Right, so we will provide that information.
And what's my question when this, yes, but it is ones which cannot attend their own attachment schools, so.
Right.
So young people that can't attend their nearest or local catchment school, how much is that costing home to school transport wise, county wide? Okay, great. Fabulous, thank you. So unless anyone's got any burning questions on this part, I think it might be a good opportunity for me and Sam to try and sum up and pull together a few recommendations that we have at this point before we move on to the other section of the agenda where I have a long thing to read out and seek your agreement to pause the meeting. I've certainly picked up, obviously we've covered a lot of ground there and started some conversations that I think are going to carry on outside this room. It is quite fortunate that we've got someone from pretty much everywhere in the county in the room today. I'm actually from Malvern Hills, but I haven't mentioned Malvern Hills yet, but I'm sure I'll pick that conversation up with you, Rachel, another time. So I've made a few points, but typing and listening is not a strong point of mine. So let's see what I've got, and then I might come to Sam to see what else she's got and see if we've missed anything. So obviously, we do welcome the news that the Malvern Send Free School will be hopefully built at the earliest opportunity, and that is still your recommendation to Cabinet, Councillor Foster, which is really good. Because it increases the specialist provision in the south of the county, where I think I was quoted in the paper of saying there is a bit of a desert. So I don't know if I said that or not, but obviously I did. But also recognising the fact that although, where possible, inclusion is important in mainstream education, it's not appropriate for all young people and all children. So it's good to have the free school there. And that also we're looking at ways to improve our own SEND capacity, but more on that to follow soon in the conversation. We note the falling birth rates, I think is something that I've written down here, that there are some specific challenges in Bromsgrove highlighted by the Cabinet member, by officers and by local members present here today, but that conversations are ongoing about how to solve those issues, including looking at increasing capacity. Was I right with that? Have I captured that properly in some of the schools? We've also got, it was about expansion, a possibility of North Bromsgrove expansion, I think I'd made a note of, okay. But there are ongoing feasibility studies that are working their way through course. Sufficiency in Worcester City, we've noted, has eased due to capacity in other schools coming forward that we weren't aware of perhaps the last time we discussed this. Please tell me if I'm getting this horribly wrong. And that we've noted that Cabinet will take forward the recommendation to remove funding from the new school, from the secondary school from budget. What else have I got? That we're going to be focusing on making SEND needs through place where possible, so focusing on that geography around the local young person. Did I get that? Or is that government? And that we're going to be, that's government, so let's not include that bit at this point. And the rest is about government too on mine. So Sam, have I missed anything that we wanted to pick on at this point? You've done a great job. Sam's having to make notes and keep me on track and do everything today. So
there are some actions which Rachel is going to pick up outside of the meeting, so I've got those separately. But I haven't got any other comments, just the actions.
Okay. So nothing specific that we want to feed back to Cabinet other than that we're supportive of the things that we've heard from Cabinet member today around the SEND free school and local SEND provision. Anything else? Okay, no? Great. Okay, so I'm going to do something now I haven't... Oh, Rachel.
Can I just clarify one point just for the record of the minutes? Recommendation H regarding the budget available for Worcester City Secondary School is not to remove the budget, it is to rename the budget from Worcester City Secondary School to Worcester City Secondary Sufficiency. So that would then support the provision of that budget being able to provide for Bishop Perrone expansion, Tudor Grange expansion and any other expansion or need for additional places in Worcester City Secondary.
Understood. So it's more nuanced than I had said in that it can be kind of split up to support provision across a network of schools rather than focusing on one new build. Have I got that right now? Are we all right with that, Sam? Yeah. Okay, fab. Okay, so it's at this point in the meeting, excuse me, I'm reading a speech here, that I'm seeking the agreement of the panel in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 to the following resolution to exclude the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of the following item of business, which is in brackets the exempt appendix 7 of the Cabinet report, on the grounds that if they were present during such consideration, it is likely that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in section 1001 and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Namely, they contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. And the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Do I have your agreement now to exclude members of the press that aren't here at the moment, but maybe listening online? So we will need to turn off the webcast now, okay? Fabulous. Let's do that, Sam, please. Josh, you can stay. It's okay. You're going anyway? Okay. That's okay. I might need to start wriggling around just to see if I come back on the screen. I think there's a bit of a lag, so.
I think it is streaming.
Okay.
Do a refresh.
Your council gave me a parking ticket the other time. So annoying.
Okay. Oh, that's me wiggling around. Okay, we are back online, everybody. Thank you. Welcome back to members of the public. We have just resolved as a committee to go back into live session. So it's good to have you back with us if you are there. So I don't know if there's anything left for me to say other than, do I make the recommendation in public now? Yeah. That we, just to get the right wording.
Supportive of recommendation
yeah.
K of the Cabinet report.
Yeah, so that we've agreed that we are supportive of the recommendations in K, what do we say, in the report? Yep, and that will be taken forward to Cabinet. Thank you.
To clarify, the 5th of February Cabinet report recommendation K.
That's right, thank you, Sam. Should have been clearer. Okay, I think all that's left for me to say is thank you to everyone for your participation, and the date of our next meeting is Thursday the 20th of March at 10 o'clock here in Pershore, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.